Thank you very much for that opening kirtan.
Thank you.
Jai Ho. Welcome to Govinda, Kapilji, Rakesh, Ras Vilas, and Vijay Krishna also with us. Jai. Do you want to start off with reading the verse and giving any commentary that you want on it? The first verse just has a short purport, so maybe we can, after we do a short discussion of this, we can move on to the next verse also, which is 19. But Pavana, Radhe, Shyam, do you want to read the verse and the translation and commentary to start off this morning? You need to unmute yourself, I think. Did you hear what it? Yes, no?
Yes. We're bringing it up.
Okay.
It was 18.
18, 19, 18. There it is.
Okay. So just translation?
Just translation.
O Vaishnuta, please narrate to us transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Person Godhead, multi-incarnations. Such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers. Do you want it purport?
Just two sentences.
For the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material worlds, the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead himself, appears in many thousands of forms of incarnations, and the specific adventures found in those transcendental forms are all auspicious. Both those who are present during such activities and those who hear the transcendental narrations of such activities are benefited.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, God is an amazing entity, and yeah, he can do amazing things and multi-incarnations. You know, he can incarnate any way he wants himself to be for whatever given situation, I suppose. So just validates the Supreme Lord, personality of Godhead.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. Not just a little short report. Maybe Raj Vilas, you want to read to 1119 also, and that'll give us two verses for discussion as
Sure, Prabhu.
longer report as well.
Srimad Bhagavatam 1119. Vayam tu priyamam uttam sloke vikramane yachurvattatam rasya jnanam swadu swadu pade pade. Translation. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers, and those who have developed a test of transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Purport by his divine grace, the Bhakti was Prabhupada Ki Jai. There is a great difference between mundane stories, fiction or history, and the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. The histories of the whole universe contain references to the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas are histories of bygone ages recorded in connection with the pastimes of the incarnations of the Lord and therefore remain fresh even after repeated readings. For example, anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life and yet find in them new light of information. Mundane news is static, whereas transcendental news is dynamic, in as much as the spirit is dynamic and matter is static. Those who have developed a taste for understanding the transcendental subject matter are never tired of hearing such narrations. One is quickly satiated by mundane activities, but no one is satiated by transcendental or devotional activities. Uttama Sloka indicates that literature which is not meant for niche sense. Mundane literature is in the mode of darkness or ignorance, whereas transcendental literature is quite different. Transcendental literature is above the mode of darkness and is light, and its light becomes more luminous and progressive reading and realizations of the transcendental subject matter. The so-called liberated persons are never satisfied by the repetition of the word Aham Brahmasmi. Such artificial realizations of Brahman becomes hackneyed and hackneyed. So to relish real pleasure, they turn to the narrations of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Those who are not so fortunate turn to altruism and worldly philanthropy. This means the Maya Vada philosophy is mundane, whereas the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental.
Thoughts?
So this is something which we all thrive for. This verse is one of the most important verses. And in this one, the last 4 words, Swadu Swadu Pade Pade, is very important. Swad means test, and Pade Pade means at every step. This is what the nourishment is. So the 9 processes of bhakti, they are described by Prahlad Maharaj in 7th canto. And the first one is hearing, Sravanam, right? Chanting and remembering and so on. So it's emphasized by Prahlad Maharaj, and anybody's bhakti, unless somebody is at the platform of Sukhdev Goswami, who was born as Paramhansa. For us, the first step to progress in bhakti is hearing. That means hearing about the Lord. So, and this is true when Srila Vyasadeva, the literal incarnation of Lord, was not happy even after writing all the Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, and much more. And on his on advice of his spiritual master Narada, he became fully satisfied. And when he wrote about the glories of Supreme Lord, then only he was satisfied. As the verse states that those who are on transcendental platform, they are just only satisfied once they hear about, they write about the transcendental qualities of the Lord. Why hearing about the Lord is transcendental? Because this is real. Everything else is illusionary. It's just the reflection of what happens in spiritual world, right? So we are all living in illusion, and that's why we are not satisfied. So when we read about Lord, when we hear about Lords, that is real, and that takes us to the reality. And there's so much mundane literature. We always hear this is the bestseller in New York stories or Washington Post, and some of these are related to someone's biography, and then people say, oh well, did you read that biography? It's so inspiring, right? And what is so inspiring? I mean, what is missing in our scriptures, in Bhagavatam? You talk about anything. You want to learn about economy, how to handle economy, it's there. You want to learn about friendship, it's there. If you want to learn about how to handle big kingdom, it's there, right? Now the whole earth is divided into so many countries, but 5,000 years ago it was all one, right? And then Yudhishthira Maharaj was ruling everything under the direction of Lord Krishna, right? So everything is there. So people want to live in fantasies. And what is fantasies? Fantasies literature offer the reader much of what general fictions offers, which means escape and adventure, actually. So that is what fantasy is. And we all want to live in fantasies. But it goes far beyond the familiar realms of belief. Fantasies and fictions, they are far beyond belief. So whatever we read in terms of fiction and fantasies, actually we are not different. We are all living in fantasies that, oh, we belong to this world and we live here. This is our fantasies, right? And whatever we see around, these are all fictions. So critics of the fantasies, in fact, from scientific point of view, they say that the genre believe that indulging in fantasy stories can shift in person's focus to less productive matters. And this is what happened. But on the other hand, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we are more intelligent, we are more focused. So Prabhu, I would say that the tendency of hearing doesn't come immediately, and it developed by devotee association, such as exactly what we are doing now. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. While you were speaking, I was thinking of those verses. Nayadvachastitam parahare yaso jagat pavitam tadvayasam tirtam usanti nanyata nayatraham sha. Says those literatures, those mundane literatures, which do not indicate spirit or the spiritual world, are compared to places of pilgrimage for crows, where crow-like people go and they pick through dead things, trying to enjoy chewing what has already been chewed and discarded. On the other hand, tat pag visargo janataga viplavo yashmin pratishokam avida namami antasya hatobra goyani bidani kitani chashmaranti. Those literatures about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they be imperfectly composed, they're capable of bringing about a revolution in the misdirected lives of modern civilization. And they are heard and sung by swan-like men. So birds flock together. Crow-like men, they like the bestsellers. Swan-like men like the Srimad Bhagavatam. Amrita Sundari, I'm sure you have some insightful comments for us.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. My obeisances to all the devotees. I was reminded of the one story, Brahmachari, when he visited Srila Prabhupada towards the end timings of Prabhupada. So this Brahmachari, he was chanting 64 rounds a day, and Prabhupada wanted him to train the Westerner devotees when Prabhupada came with them to India. But the Brahmachari got scared that in the association of Westerners, he might get attracted to a Western lady, and he didn't want to give up his Brahmachari ashram. So he could not accept Srila Prabhupada's desire to help him. But nevertheless, he went to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was going to leave his body soon. And Prabhupada called him. Prabhupada had become weak because he had given up eating and drinking. So Prabhupada asked him to come closer. And this brahmachari wanted to know more about the holy name. He was chanting 64 rounds since a long time, but he had some questions which were not answered about the holy name. So when he visited Srila Prabhupada asked him to come closer, and he came closer. Then Prabhupada said, come more closer. And Prabhupada kept signaling him to come closer till he came, right next to Srila Prabhupada, and he put his ear next to Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada chanted the Hare Krishna mantra once. And just by hearing Prabhupada's pure sound vibration, because he was ready to receive it, because he had been serving the holy name nicely, he had these realizations of the holy name, which he had not had before. And all his curiosity and desires to know and serve the holy name more just got fulfilled just by hearing Srila Prabhupada say the holy name. So Krishna is absolute, and his names, his qualities, stories about him, his pastimes with his devotees, they're also absolute. And because Krishna is infinite, his pastimes have infinite sweetness to them and realizations to them. So that's why the sages are saying, we are not tired. In fact, we're very fresh and we want to hear more and more.
Says we never tire of hearing, and also we never get tired. The pure devotees never get tired. Prabhupada slept so little, 3 or 4 hours a night. He thought sleeping was a waste of time.
Right.
Sleeping was in the mode of ignorance. And similarly, Maharishi Parikshit heard from Sukadeva Goswami for 7 days and 7 nights. So that means continuously without eating, and also it means that he must not have slept either.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, he said, Name savo parayani brahmana anashanini pibato chitopirsham tadbhakyabdi vinisadam. Says my hearing was so acute. I was enjoying to drink all the nectar, pibanti te bhagavatam atmana satam, the nectar from the satam, the pure devotee Sukadeva Goswami. He says that I had no desire throughout the 7 days to eat, no desire to even drink. I mean, you're supposed to die if you don't have water after only 3 days, but apparently Maharishi Parikshit survived and thrived. And then also, he didn't sleep during the course of 7 days. So the topics of Krishna consciousness are so enlivening that one doesn't tire of them, but apparently one doesn't, him or herself, become tired either. We'll recall that one of the names Krishna used to refer to Arjuna was Godakesh. Godakesh means one who never sleeps. So practically speaking, that's one indication. Prabhupada said that when you're eating, your hunger goes away. The less you feel hunger, the less the more satisfied you are. So similarly, the more your material desires are not a problem, that's an indication of your advancement in spiritual life. So by the same token, the more excited you are to get up early in the morning and glorify the Lord and work on behalf of the Lord till late at night, and the less sleep that you feel like you need would also be an indication of the level of advancement. Kapilji, anything to add here?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Krishna.
But I think there's nothing much to add. It's just that 18th verse is mostly a prelude to the 19th one, setting the stage, saying that Krishna, he incarnate, there are multiple incarnations. And with those multiple incarnations, there are thousands and thousands of pastimes. So it's setting up the stage for the 19th, that when there are thousands and thousands of pastimes, how can one develop the taste for those pastimes? See, the eventual goal is to develop the love, the devotion, the service attitude, and ultimately the surrender. But surrender have multiple facets to it. Like surrender, sometimes there is surrender, but there is doubt. In second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna says, Karpanya dosho prahat sabhava pashyami tvam dharma samudacheta shishyastatam, where he says that there is surrender, like he says, that's the first time in that particular pastime, Arjuna says that I surrender unto you. But 2 verses later, in the 9th verse, he says, I do not want to fight. And then there are a lot of verses in the 2nd chapter that talks about that a lot of people, they give emphasis to reading Vedas and try to know God through Vedas. And there is nothing wrong to it. But the ultimate goal is to know him. And when you know him, you serve him. There is no point knowing him and about his pastime and about his magnanimity that we discussed last time, and then don't make time for him or don't love him. So I think here in the 18th and 19th chapter, 19th verse, especially in the 19th verse, when you start developing that taste and you learn and you cherish those pastimes, that can help one develop that attitude to love him. So I think the main point here is when we make time for God by reading and discussing and cherishing these pastimes, he gives us the guarantee, he gives us the assurance that he'll make time for us.
So you made a couple of good points, that the number of incarnations and therefore the number of leelas and pastimes are inexhaustible. There's just so much material that one could never digest it, even in many, many lifetimes. Anantashesha has hundreds of hoods, and he's been glorifying the Lord since time immemorial, but he's nowhere near reaching the end of the Lord's glories. And aside from the fact that there's so many of them, you could just take one, and it's because it's always fresh and you never tire of it. You could just, because it's not a matter of going through everything, just like reading a book and then putting it aside, because every pastime of the Lord is relishable. You could spend an entire lifetime on just one pastime, and there are millions and millions of them. So who can sleep? Sleep is the last thing on a devotee's mind. So much to do. And then making arrangements to share all that. That's a whole nother thing, you know. Probably to tax your brains, how to share, how to preach. Christians, they use this term gospel, you know, the gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke. The gospel means literally good news. That's what it means. So if you had good news, like how to cure, if you knew how to cure COVID, right, then you would want to figure out how to share that with as many people as possible. Or if you know how to cure cancer. So the nature of such good news is that you're criminal, in fact, if you keep it to yourself. You have to take that good news, and by its very nature, you have to share it. So who can sleep? Govinda Dave. Good morning.
Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Please accept humble obeisances. Well, I think this has been pretty nicely covered, but I'll try and toss in 2 cents. Caru, you had asked at the end of last week that we all give some thought to why it is that you can continue to relish the pastimes of the Lord unlimitedly, that it never grows old. Whereas when you read mundane literature, if you can get through it once, that's probably going to be it. And so I've given some thought to that. I think it is a mundane literature, is a product of Krishna's external energy. And so it speaks to our mind, but does not necessarily and ordinarily does not speak to our soul. Whereas transcendental literature really is a product of Krishna's internal energy. And provided that our souls are awakened or woke, we can relish that in our soul, because the soul receives and appreciates transcendental knowledge in a way that is never appreciated by the mind. I think it's right here in the purport. Anyone may read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam repeatedly throughout his whole life, and yet find in them new light of information. If you read just a novel or the news, you'll hear that, but there's very, very little chance, unless you're reading a novel that really has a spiritual theme that may stimulate your soul somewhat. And you might want to come back and read that again, but chances are it won't. But Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nothing but the transcendental realm, the spiritual realm. And if I think some people, their souls are covered. They can't read it, and they might pick up Srimad Bhagavatam, and whereas a devotee says, I want to read this over and over and over again, someone else might say, this is just a bunch of rubbish. I don't know why you read this at all, because their souls are covered, and so they can't receive the knowledge. And Krishna will impart the understanding of the scriptures, of the transcendental knowledge, to those who are surrendered and who are really looking for him. So that's why I think for devotees, you can come back to the same pastimes over and over again, because we're all trying to fight the war against Maya, and so our souls become covered all the time. This is going on, and picking up Srimad Bhagavatam, for someone whose soul is awakened, it's like a glass of cool water in the desert every single time, and you can relish it because it brings you into the spiritual realm. And who doesn't want to be there? Because that's where the joy is. That's where all the happiness is. That's where you understand really who you are and who God is. And just having the opportunity to bring yourself into that Krishna consciousness is why someone would read that over and over again. And each time you do it, I think, if you're advancing spiritually, Krishna will reveal what is really in the literature, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in deeper ways, and give you deeper realizations. So I think you just used the word inexhaustible. There'd be no end. I've come back to certain verses many, many times, and I'm sure, Caru, you have come back to certain verses hundreds and hundreds of times, and it seems like it's always speaking to you in different ways. So that's the difference, I guess, between mundane and transcendental. If I've misspoken there, kindly correct me, but that was my thought about this. Hare Krishna.
I think that everybody's added some important element to the discussion, that not only are there unlimited incarnations and therefore uncountable pastimes, such a big field of subject matter, and each one of them can be relishable for an entire lifetime. And then what you said is that we're meant to discuss them. We're not meant to just study them alone. And in discussing them, what we realize is that every single devotee is given different vision, a different angle by the Lord from within the heart. So there are unlimited numbers of ways of looking at those pastimes also. We often sometimes read about one commentator, Vishwanath Chakravarti and Baladev Vidyabhusan, interpreting a pastime in exactly opposite ways. And you think, well, and we think it has to be this way or this way. We think in terms of historicity, that it happened one time. But these pastimes are happening repeatedly in different universes eternally, over and over and over again. And so one commentator says it was the Kadamba tree was this way, and the other one says the Kadamba tree was that way. And we think, well, which one is right? Well, they're both right, because they're seeing it with different visions from Krishna within the heart. So that's why all these different subject matters and all the different interpretations and insights, all that becomes multiplied when we sit down with devotees to discuss it. And then you can sit down with those same devotees a year later and the same verse, and because the devotees have matured in their realization, the discussion itself is different than what it was before. Same people, same verse, but an entirely different discussion, entirely different enlightenment. Anyway, it's just mind-boggling, the expanse of spirit. And on the other hand, I mean, just look at the bestsellers. Just look at the bestsellers. They're all about, well, first they're all about murder, aren't they? That's really it, right? Without a good murder, nobody's interested. There's a little teaser, and it tells you how the murder took place and who's investigating the murder, right? These are the most popular type of suspense literatures. So that's supposed to suck you in. But hey, it's all about the same morbidity. It's like, it's literally the literature for crows. What do crows do? They look for roadkill. They look for dead bodies. So every good best-selling suspense literature starts, hey, guess what? With a dead body. So it's so limited and predictable and static. So thank you for that. Now, Ras Vilas, Amrita Sundari, don't go away. Are you there within earshot? Okay, we're going to go to Vijay here, and then Rakesh to give a commentary and a kirtan. But I wanted Ras Vilas or Amrita Sundari to say a little something about how keen on these avatars, their incarnations, discussing amongst ourselves in depth these different leelas is the result, on top of everything else, during this month of Purushottam Mas, the result is going to be even more amplified. So can you give us some idea about the extra benefits and the characteristics of this month that we just entered into, I think, on the 18th, isn't it?
17th here and 18th in India.
Mm-hmm.
So many devotees have glorified the Purushottam Mas, but the background story is to balance the calendars on the basis of moon and the sun. Every 32 months and some hours, an extra month is added in the lunar calendar to make it equal to the solar calendar. And as we know, in the spiritual world, everything is a personality and there is a deity presiding over everything. So the presiding deity of this extra month, she was being neglected by the Karmakandi Brahmana, especially because it was considered useless because you could not perform any auspicious activity in terms of material achievements. So she got very dejected and she visits Lord Vishnu crying and asking for help. And she says, everybody treats me so bad. Nobody welcomes me. They don't want to do anything auspicious. Only you can help me. And she faints. And then Garuda fans her and revives her. And then Lord Vishnu is like, I'm very sorry to hear your condition. Let's go to Lord Krishna. And so Lord Vishnu takes her to Lord Krishna in Golok Vrindavan. And even before they could approach Golok Vrindavan, the effulgence is so strong and bright that this Devi had to hide behind Lord Vishnu. She could not take, it was so bright. And then Lord Vishnu accompanies her to Krishna and she's still crying. And Lord Krishna is like, who is crying? Nobody cries in Golok Vrindavan out of misery. You cry, but it's either love for Krishna or separation of Krishna. That crying is totally different, but this is pitiable crying. And then Lord Vishnu pulls her out saying, she is crying and she needs help. And then she tells the Lord Krishna same thing, that nobody likes me. I don't have a husband. Nobody welcomes me. Nothing good can be done in my time that I preside over. And Lord Krishna is like, don't worry. I will marry you and I'll give you my name. So he gives her Purushottam. He's the Purushottam, the best person, the supreme personality of Godhead. Purushottam. And he says anybody who performs any spiritual activity, any pious activity will please me immensely. So you get the benefit of 1,000 times of doing the same activity. And this year I found out that it's considered even more auspicious than Kartik month, you know. And then even to neglect it, or it's like if you have somebody such exalted come to you, and if you disrespect that person, don't acknowledge, it's your loss, So there's a background story of how Draupadi in her previous life ignored the month and she suffered. But then, Lord Krishna, it's a long story, but anyways, it's the same idea. If something is empowered by Krishna and we are in that time frame and we ignore it, it's totally our loss. It's an offense, actually. So anytime you sing the glories of the Lord, you offer him a lamb, read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, talk about him in the midst of devotees, What else can you say? Krishna says, I'm not anywhere. I'm there where my devotees come together and sing about me. I'm just right there. And we can feel the presence even through the screen, these 1.5 hours, feels so nice and potent, you kind of get recharged and, the same verse seems more sweeter just because we all discussed it together.
So particularly read more Bhagavatam and discuss it amongst others during this month.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful activity any day, any single day.
Nitya Bhagavata Seva.
And take bath in cold water in the morning. You get 10 more times, 1,000 into 10.
10,000 times.
I remember my mother from childhood.
Do that on your advice. Do you get part of the credit for that?
Can you say that again, Prabhuji?
I say if we take a bath during Purushottam months with cold water and we shout the name Ras Vilas.
Oh yeah, I mean, when Maharaj gave him the name,
1,001 times.
Yes.
I'm the tax collector from Spanish Fork and Salt Lake City Temple congregation. So whatever activities you do, I get little bit of that.
And we'll also, every time we read Bhagavatam, we'll also say the name of Amrita Sundari.
No, Prabhuji. No, but then, like Radhanath Maharaj says, any single activity actually can lead you to perfection. Even the act of, applying tilaka, if you're able to just do it in the right consciousness, just remembering the Lord's name and, wanting his lotus feet on your head, that itself is enough. And that's why we have been given these wonderful spiritual names, because Prabhupada said even while you're leaving your body, if you can remember your names, you'll go to you will go to Golok Vrindavan, because they just remind you of Krishna.
There's an article on chanting in the latest Back to Godhead magazine. Have you read that?
Mm-hmm.
And, I forget who the author is, but he says one type of chanting is to chant with something else in mind. In other words, you're chanting a name of Krishna, but you're thinking of something else. So that also gives you supreme benefit. And the two examples are given, of course, of Ajamil. At the last moment of his life, he was thinking of his son, but he chanted the name of Narayan. And therefore, he got a reprieve. The Yamadutas were prohibited from taking him away, and then he got 2 more years of life.
Yeah.
And also, Muslims consider boars, pig, as haram. Haram means condemned. The Prophet told the story of a Muslim who was being killed by a boar in the forest, and at the time of death he said haram. So he got liberation. In both of those are instances that you can chant the name of Krishna, but not thinking of Krishna, thinking of something else, and the name is so powerful that you can get a type of liberation as well.
Yeah, just yesterday I was reading Indra Prabhu's realization he had once. We all know he's been serving the holy name for many hours every single day. And at one time, it seems one Tantric Baba, in mode of ignorance, he kind of captured him with his black art, in the sense that Indra Prabhu was unable to move or get out of the trance that he was creating around him. And then he saw the holy name descending. He was not able to chant, But because holy name is not different from Krishna, the holy name descended in his mind. The sound vibration just descended, just like Krishna descends, in the womb of, say, Devaki, or in different incarnations. The holy name just descended in his mind, and he was at once able to cross over the illusion that guy was creating. And that time he realized, that the name is so independent, it doesn't even need a tongue. We don't even have to utter the name out. If the Lord wants to descend, he can descend it that way too. It's very beautiful and powerful to read.
I hope.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to hear from Vijay, and then we'll move to Rakesh and Subi for your comments, as well as the final Kirtan. If anybody wants to jump in at any time, you're certainly welcome to. So Vijay, please share with us what you learned. And I'm enjoying the wonderful background there too. Very devotional. I see a Madanga, a nice picture of Prabhupada, an altar, Panchatattva. And you're presenting yourself so nicely before us with a tie, a nice vest and a tie. So please share with us.
And today is my birthday.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
I need your blessings. Prabhu, accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, and thank you for this opportunity. My obeisances to all the assembled devotees. I read here, text 19, we never tire of hearing. So when I read this, a question comes to my mind. Why is it that the sages never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead? And my humble answer is, and it is related to my own realization, is that these sages, they know that they are parts and parcels of the whole of Krishna. And a wise part and parcel cannot allow himself or herself to give space in his or her life to fatigue or to being tired, because that is what a part and parcel, an intelligent part and parcel does. Never out of connection in relation to the whole. Because if you cease the connection with the whole, being a part and parcel, you will be lost in terms of knowing what to do. And the eternal constitutional position of a part and parcel is to execute service to the whole. Then just a second. I'm having here. Yes, then they also say that this God they are worshiping is not only the God who Narada Muni is worshiping, because they said that in previous verses, but also it is a God to whom we can offer prayers. And when we offer prayers, we are giving a confirmation related to the fact that, because I went to the dictionary to know the meaning of prayer, and the meaning which caught my attention the most is that when we pray because we are in need. And this is natural, like a child crying for the protection of the mother or of the father. So the idea that God is away from us, very distant from us, it is a wrong idea. God exists also to fulfill our material and spiritual needs. So it is foolishness from our part if we don't go to him to pray in hours of need. But what is the best prayer we can offer to this God who answers our prayers and give us what we need? The best prayer is to ask him in terms of getting his help for us to be best glorifiers. because we know that in Bhagavad Gita there is a verse, very famous verse, my servant, the servant that I love the most is the servant who preaches. So when we pray, we should be there praying in order to ask from God that he makes us better preachers. Then related to developing a taste for transcendental relationships, I went to verse 7 of the Nectar of Instruction. And why? Because this verse is helping us in order for us to develop a taste for transcendence. And I will read this verse number 7 from Nectar of Instruction. The holy name, the character, the pastimes and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet, like sugar candy. Although the tongue of a person tormented by ignorance cannot appreciate anything sweet, it is wonderful that by the simple fact of chanting with care these sweet names every day, then it will awaken in the tongue a natural flavor, and the disease of ignorance will gradually be destroyed by the root. So this verse helps us to develop taste for transcendence in order for us to go in harmony with the end of the verse. The end of the verse says that the goal is to relish hearing his pastimes at every moment. How can we do that? To answer this question and to finalize my contribution for today, I get the one sentence from the purport. It goes like this: transcendental literature is above the mode of darkness, and its light becomes more luminous with progressive reading and realization of the transcendental subject matter. So this expression, these two words, progressive reading, are important because without being disciplined, without being regular, without being progressive in our sadhana, we will not be able to qualify ourselves as what? As like this sentence says, if we want to be chosen by God for his intimate service, we need to, through progressive sadhana, we need to become luminous, progressive people, realized people, transcendental people. So that these are the qualifications in accordance with this sentence, which we need for us to be accepted by God, in order to be there relishing at every moment without cessation everything that is related to him. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you. I like the fact that when you make a connection to the all-powerful Govinda Dev, inexhaustible Lord, you automatically get more energy. So you need less eating, you need less sleeping. Prabhupada said that in the case of the Goswamis, they reduced those almost to nil. If you recall, Arjuna at one time, Krishna withdrew power from Arjuna to the point that while escorting Krishna's queens from Dwarka, he couldn't even defeat some normal thugs by the side of the road. And then on other occasions, when Krishna empowered Arjuna, he defeated the whole Kaurava army, including Bhisma, Karna, Ashwatthama, Dronacharya, and all those. So Arjuna became an instrument through which God could work his power. And if God wants to, he can withdraw that power so he become weak and incapable, or he can increase that power so you can defeat huge armies. But when the important thing is to make that connection and so that we have access to the unlimited source of power, unlimited source of knowledge, unlimited source of bliss. And Krishna may give us more or less of it according to the particular mission and time and place and circumstances. But from our part, we just need to be open and let him use us as he likes.
And Charu Prabhu, if I may ask, how do we make the connection?
We're going to move along while we chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Nama Chintamani Krishna, Purna Sudha Nitya Mukna. Krishna is fully present within his name, and the eternal soul, chanting, connecting with the eternal supreme soul through the practice of japa. That means that one is personally present with the Lord and one has access to the unlimited potencies of the Lord as well.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Rakesh, you and your family are going to lead the final kirtan. So prior to that, can you make your comments also?
Sure, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisances. I'll go to Srila Prabhupada, turn over to all the devotees. Prabhuji, these little ones wants to share some pastime, if that's okay.
Absolutely. We always have room for the children.
So when Krishna was a little baby, the demoness Putana, she came to kill Krishna. So she got like, what is it called? Daddy Roop ko English mein kya bolte hai?
Oh, she changed her form?
Yeah, she changed her form into a very beautiful lady. And she entered Krishna's room and she was breastfeeding Krishna. So while Krishna was drinking the milk, he also started sucking Putana's life air out, and she died. And Krishna, when she died, she gave her the form of like a mother, a nurse. He fed Krishna ji her milk.
Nice. Nice, Leela.
Archie, do you want to share some pastime? No, you don't want? You were saying Agasura. Maybe next time, okay? Okay. She said she will share the pastime of Agasura, but she changed her mind.
Excellent.
So maybe next time. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So for today's verses, thank you so much all the devotees for sharing such beautiful realizations on this verse. So what I understood from the verses and from the realizations is that all these sages who are gathered at Naimisharanya are eagerly interested. They want to hear about the incarnations and about the glories of the Lord from Suta Goswami. Even though all these sages who are present there in Naimisharanya and even among other than the sages, there were demigods and from the heaven who were also listening to Suta Goswami. So even though they are themselves like so much exalted devotees and they know everything, but still that shows that how the advanced devotees also want to hear and be with the Bhagavatam. So like Srimad Bhagavatam is the incarnation of the Lord himself, and the devotees are also, the association of devotees is also non different than associating with the Bhagavatam. So they wanted to hear from the Bhagavatam Suta Goswami, even though they have heard about these pastimes so many times. And like in today's verse, as it says, Swadu, Swadu, Pade, Pade. Even though we have heard about these pastimes and discussed with the devotees, and as you also mentioned that every time we discuss it again, even though the person or the devotees are the same, but the relishment is different. And if I want to relate it in a layman's term like me, who may not understand much about the devotional thing and is just barely beginning the journey, but if I can relate it in the material sense, when we go to the college and if it's a new subject, for example, math, when we started math, the first time we were very scared, but if we try to engage ourselves and practice to learn it, then when we slowly start learning about it, and if we study the same chapters or the same subject again, then we can get better in understanding it, and then we slowly develop our interest into it. and not just math, any exercise or any activity that we perform, if we spend more time with it and as we progress slowly, then we start getting more nectar out of it. Similarly, in our transcendental journey, when we associate with devotee, we pray to the Lord and we pray devotees for the mercy of the Lord, then we will slowly make advancement. And like as we said, the incarnation and these glorious pastimes, they are all unlimited. So there is no limit to it. The limit is of the person. I as a person am limited, and that's why I'm not able to understand it. And if I will get the mercy, slowly I will keep advancing, and then slowly I will keep getting the nectar out of it. And that is why I will keep getting the more interest. And once the person is blessed and actually develop the taste, there is no going back. They will always try to be engaged more and more, because that nectar, I don't think I have ever get a taste of it, but I will believe on the devotees and the gurus that say that the taste is so great that once, if just by mistake, if one gets that taste, he will never be able to go back. Like we see people in this material world, they have so fallen that they get taste out of smoking or drinking the liquor, and they have to go for the rehabilitation for years and years to come out of this material taste. So what to speak of spiritual taste? If somebody can get that nectar, I don't think there will be ever any going back. So that is my realization on that thing, on that particular part of the verse. Then another thing that I want to add here is a past, not the past, a story from Prabhupada's lecture, where he was explaining that how these birds and animals and all these other species, they have the qualities that we humans have, like they eat, they mate, they sleep, and they defend. If somebody tries to attack, then they defend themselves, and that is what we do. Then what is the difference between a bird or an animal or any other species compared to the humans? If we also do the same thing, if we are always engaged in this material life, that we are always centric with material consciousness, and then we are non-different than these species. We are not doing anything different. It's the consciousness which makes us human. It's the consciousness that makes us different than these animals. Animals go fight and kill others, and if humans are also doing the same thing, then they are probably even worse than those animals, because animals, because of their previous karma, are born in that species, in that particular form, and they don't have this consciousness that they should not kill and eat meat. But these humans who have this consciousness, who are blessed to be a human born in this life, are still killing those innocent animals and just to make a meal out of them. I don't think there will be any mercy on them unless they realize it and change their consciousness. So they are even worse than the animals. That's what I think. I might be offending a few people. I with folded hands, I want to say sorry to them, but that's my personal realization, that we in this form should understand what Krishna wants us to achieve, what the devotees and our spiritual gurus wants us to achieve. Because like even in the past times we have seen, it's not just about like here remembering the Lord. Like yes, we should always try to remember the Lord, and our consciousness should be stuck on the Lord. But it also depends what is our motive and how we are like concentrating our consciousness on the Lord. Just like Kamsa, like he was scared of the Lord and he wanted to kill the Lord. And Shishupal, like he was so jealous of the material form of the Lord and his power. So even though they were just thinking about Krishna all the time, every second, so they were actually meditating on Krishna, but their consciousness was not pure like the devotees, like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj. So even though if by mistake or with even a malicious mind, if somebody will like meditate on Krishna for sure, because Krishna is the Supreme Lord and he is so powerful and so merciful, you will be delivered. Even Kamsa and Shishupal were delivered. But then the deliverance is different, because if somebody is meditating on the material form of the Lord and feeling jealous about it, their soul is just taken back into the body of the Lord. But the devotees who are meditating with a right consciousness, they go back to the Goloka Vrindavan and then be part of the pastimes and spend time in Golok Vrindavan with Krishna. So that's a huge there is a huge difference. They are all delivered, but where they go back after deliverance is different. So that's why, like, if we can try to, even though we are born as human and we are attached in the, like, stuck in this material world, and we have to follow certain material things, like if I don't do a job, I won't have money to support my family. If I don't support my family and myself, if we don't eat, we'll just die, and that won't help our journey to go back to the Godhead. So yes, we should all do, like Prabhupada said, there is nothing wrong if the devotee is dressed nicely and looking like well groomed and looking good, because yeah, they have to preach and they have to if a devotee is not looking nice, with, like, not to go in the detail, but yeah, if we look nice, then yeah, first impression is if it is good, then it's a good start. So there is nothing wrong in earning money, nothing wrong in doing a job, but if we can keep our consciousness right, that I'm doing a job so I can earn money to support Krishna consciousness, I can use this money to spread more Krishna consciousness. I'm married, yes, I want to have a child, and with the consciousness that the child that I will bring into this world, I will try to educate them well so they can know about Krishna consciousness and they can go back to the Godhead. If this is a consciousness, then there is nothing wrong in having a family, nothing wrong in having a job. So that's my understanding and realization on this verse, and that is what I want to pray for the Lord and the mercy of all the devotees here, that if for a second I can have that right consciousness, then probably, like, because they say even if for the fraction of the second, if somebody has the right consciousness, they are going to be delivered. Just like in the example you mentioned, Prabhuji, like he was calling for his son Narayana, but he was delivered, he was saved from those demons, from like Yamraj sent to take him to the hell. So that is what I understand and I realize from these verses, and I pray for all your mercy. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the opportunity. Hare Krishna.
All right, thanks everyone for your comments. So what you're saying, Kirtan. Krishna says, Devi Yeshaguni, even the material energy is divine. And so even though we kind of discourage getting rasa, getting taste from material things, it is there. Rakesh used the example that the more you go into mathematics, the more you relish it. And the reason is that that's also has to do with the divine energy of Krishna, because Krishna is all attractive. Even when we approach him indirectly through his energies are working so amazingly and intricately. And that's because of Krishna. Krishna is amazing and intricate. And so it is possible to spend a whole lifetime in mathematics, or even in a subcategory of mathematics or chemistry, and there is relish. It's not that it's not relishable. Otherwise, why would people get involved in it in the first place? But compared to the relish that we get by directly connecting with the unlimited Krishna and the all-powerful and the eternal Lord, it's just, and devotees are also mathematicians, they're also chemists, but when you take your profession, your area of interest, and you put it in the overall context of Krishna consciousness, that's actually the perfection of life. Not to see anything separate from Krishna, but to see everything in connection with Krishna. So you're not seeing math as a separate entity, chemistry as a separate entity. You're not seeing your family as a separate entity, but you're seeing everything in the overall context that it belongs to and it emanates from, and it's orchestrated by Krishna. So that's Krishna consciousness. Thank you for those insights, Rakesh, and Are you yourself going to lead Kirtan today?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I'm going to try, Prabhuji.
We're cheering you on.
And I'm using this headphone for the first time, Prabhuji. So am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes,
Hare
we
Krishna,
can hear
Prabhuji.
you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna Hare
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you for the concluding Kirtan.
I'm gonna decorate.
Official Kirtan, Pavana, Radhe, Shyam. Thank you for the oversights on Purushottama Mas, Amrita Sundari. Starting things off, Ras Vilas. Thank you, Vijay, for stressing the importance of connecting with Krishna, allowing ourselves to be used as his instruments. Govinda Day, Kapil Day, thank you for your contributions. Until we meet next week, please try to take advantage of the auspicity of the month to increase your reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. And every time you jump into the cold shower, think of Ras Vilas as your mentor in that area.
I wanted to tell Rakesh Prabhu that I was a bored mathematician and I'm still practicing mathematics.
Haribol.
Haribol.
And about relishing rasas, as Caru Prabhu said, that's what I imagine. Whenever I have squares, I think that Krishna is there, and it tastes so nice.
When he's in the cold shower in the morning, he's screaming out equations and mathematical formulas.
Calculus.
Prabhuji, you inspired me to give it a try, Rasvilas Prabhu. It's all your mercy.
It was very good, Prabhuji. Very nice. Hare Krishna.
The best thing will be when we can swap, Prabhu. Okay, let me know when we can swap. You take cold bath, I take hot bath.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Charu Prabhu, if I may, I have a degree in philosophy. I am a philosophy teacher, but I gave up being a philosophy teacher to become a preacher, and I need your help.
Anybody who preaches has automatically got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, the 6 Goswamis, Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, and Krishna will win in a heart. So,
thank you very much.
Oh, Lord bless. Well, thank you very much, and we'll see some of you next Saturday night at the temple and be together for our Zoom call as well. Until we meet again, don't forget to chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Wonderful session. Thank you very much.